If anyone is watching on Patreon, just know that I won't see your questions or comments in there. I'm gonna adjust how I'm sitting. There we go. Okay, it's a little more comfortable. Okay, yay. So book club time. We're gonna do covering the Celestine prophecy. We'll let people kind of like hop on for a minute or two, but I hope that you guys really liked the book, or got something useful out of it, even if you didn't like love it. At least I hope that you got something interesting or useful out of it. I grab my laptop here while we're hopping on. Can you guys hear me okay? Those of you who are here, just pop in the comments, let me know you can hear me. I want to make sure we're all good. Sounds all good. Yeah, okay, good. Were most of you able to get to the end, to the 9th insight? Okay, all right, I had a couple people say that they're gonna be watching from Patreon or on the go, so they're probably not gonna comment much. All right, that's okay. I hope that you guys enjoyed on the 8th. Okay, so our topic will go like through the end of the book today, so you might get a little bit of a spoiler, but not too much. So overall, what did you guys think of like the idea of teaching these kind of spiritual concepts or energetic, it's kind of more like energy concepts, through like a fictional story? What did you guys think of that? Because a lot of like spiritual texts, you know, and texts that cover like energy work and how energy works and things like that, a lot of them are like how-to books, right? There's a lot of bullet points. There's a lot of like steps and things like that. So yeah, what did you guys think? I think it makes it more digestible and relatable. Love it. Yeah, digestible and relatable. Yeah, I feel like it's like because you can kind of like get a sense of like this is how this person, like this is how we would probably actually feel. Like a lot of times he's actually like running from danger. And then it's almost as though like he has to like navigate his way while being a human being. And it's like, it makes you feel like, oh yeah, I could see myself also being afraid in this. I could see myself also like feeling like kind of incredulous or skeptical about learning what these people are telling me to learn and stuff like that, you know? Or like, what's the deal with this manuscript? Why do I have to go look for that? You know what I mean? You can imagine it played out, yeah. Whereas like sometimes with spiritual and like, you know, energy work and like woo-woo stuff, you kind of like, I think a lot of teachers in nonfiction do a good job of teaching through story as well. But it's very much something where it's kind of like they have to like describe it through the story, and then they have to like give you the bullet points on how to do X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of like I enjoy those too, but I really liked this being very in the moment. And kind of like just showing him navigating it through step by step. Were there any insights that like stood out to you guys as well? Like which insights were you, like which ones did you really feel like, ooh, this one really resonates, or, oh, this one, I feel like I've experienced this one before, or this is the one I think I'm kind of at in my life or circling in my life right now? You loved number 3 as an energy healer. What was it in particular you really liked about the third insight? You've been practicing seeing auras around people and plants. Love that. Um, and that's something where, so I think what was interesting about those ones is like, they teach it in like phases and steps, almost like, hey, like you have to start here to go to here, to go to here, to go to here. If you don't learn these parts won't make sense, right? Which makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. Like we really want to like kind of be aware that like certain things aren't going to make sense until other things are kind of grasped. And like, have you guys ever did you guys try to practice any of the early insights at least? Like flowing energy to things? Like, did you get an urge to test anything out as you were going through? Like, did you try any of the principles like noticing beauty, um, feeling appreciation, nature gazing, um, like the flowing of the energy toward plants, and I liked a lot of the energy work they did around their food and plants and stuff like that, because it had mirrored things my guides had told me in the past before I'd ever read this book or any other book that mentioned it for that matter. It kind of reminded me also that insight also reminded me of those studies they did with rice. Do you guys know what those are? Or like with water, where they would one they would have like 2 things of rice, and they would like speak words of love. I love you so much. You're doing great. To one bucket of rice, and then the other one it was like I hate you, and blah blah blah. And they would see and give them the exact same conditions otherwise. And the rice that they spoke words of love to was like totally fine, and the rice that they spoke hate to had like mold. And people have done this with like water and have tried it with plants and stuff like that. It reminded me of those studies too, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I've been talking more to a tree I go sit at every day. I love it. I notice beauty in front of me right now. When you're noticing beauty, have you been noticing more light and color, or the auric field glowing around different plants, or people or things like that? Because we can actually do this with people, right? So that's what they start to teach, and they build up to it by the time you get to the 8th insight, which is flowing energy toward people without getting depleted yourself, right? That's like where this book is taking us, because this is how humanity is meant to evolve, through, like, I loved how they showed that as like a process. So in the beginning, they teach you how to do it with things like plants, like fill up your own energy. This will help you get clearer intuitions. This will help you notice more synchronicities. You'll be able to feel and sense your own unanswered questions, and then the answers will present themselves to you. And that's something I noticed for myself in my own life. And then it builds up all the way to like breaking control dramas, and like overcoming family, like understanding your spiritual purpose, finding your unanswered questions, all these different things. And then you get to the 8th insight, and it talks about, okay, now you're ready because you know how to fill up your own energy without getting depleted. Now you know how to flow energy to other people. And so like, since you know how to flow energy to other people, that helps them speak more clearly. Did you guys get that part? I was like, when I first read this, I was like, oh my God, my guides taught me this. Like, this is so interesting. And so it makes a lot of sense though, why we would have to like learn how to fill up our own energy tanks, because otherwise we play in the control dramas. And at least according to the book, there's like the competition for energy, and we go from competing to energy to just being full with energy, because we know how to fill up without taking from someone, or without expecting from someone, or trying to dominate someone, or doing the poor me or the aloof or whatever. And instead we can flow energy and send love and appreciation to someone to help them bring out their insights or get their words across to us correctly. And that's how we share stories and continue the evolution and help each other. Right. So we're meant to be like learning that. I used to lead groups where we would practice that a lot, and people felt like they're like, oh my God, I feel better like all day afterward. Reminding me of how when I set more boundaries around my controlling mom, my health literally gets better. I check my life force energy back. Yeah. And sometimes with like controlling people, because we all have probably, did you guys see your own control dramas when you were reading? Like, did you recognize, oh, I used to play this one? Because that's the whole thing with the book is if we have one person who's, for example, an intimidator or an interrogator, controlling parents are often one of those two. That means we're playing a role. So which role were we playing? And it talks about how the roles create each other and bounce back and forth. So if you have an interrogator or intimidator parent, you probably played an aloof drama as well, because that's what you learned to do. But then you start to realize like, oh, I'm actually playing a part in the control drama. I have to break the aloof drama. I have to state what's going on. So then they talk about how to break the aloof drama, because that's one of the most common ones actually, rather than an intimidator or an interrogator. And they talk about that in the book a lot, is like people often won't be able to see or name their own dramas. They're like, well, I don't do that. And it's like by you saying that, I can see exactly which one you do. And so it's really interesting too, kind of like watching, like when I first read it, I was like, oh, some of these are connected to fawn responses and fight and flight and like anxious attachment and like codependency and like avoidant, like, or people who swing back and forth. This is really interesting. So I was able to see some of the psych side of it in there too. I'm curious, like, which control dramas did you feel like you guys used to play, or which one do you feel like you have been playing? Or sometimes it's more than one. Sometimes we might, depending on our relationship or a dynamic, we might flip in and out of a couple of different control dramas. I used to be an aloof, like for sure, because I had an interrogator, intimidator parent. And then I started having to state to my parent to break my part in the drama and saying like, hey, I know you want to get a certain, like you think you're going to get a certain response or outcome by doing this and this, but that's not really going to work. And I've noticed that you keep repeating that, hoping for the same result, but that's not really going to work. Or I'd be like, wow, you seem really angry. And like I kept practicing. Part of that was through therapy. And it helps a lot. Like sometimes they get angrier, right? But all we can do is be like, hey, like, you know, we can't keep participating in this. So I'm like, let's give it the chance to have a different dynamic here. And you interrupt their drama at the same time. Was anyone in here an intimidator or an interrogator themselves before? Like even it might have been with like a sibling when you were younger. It might have been only in one relationship in your life for even if it was a short period of time. It might have been like maybe you played a poor me, but it was only in one circumstance. Because what I've noticed is like these are really important too, because once you read about that, you can spot them everywhere, right? Like you can see them like all over the place. I think I've been all four at different times. Yeah, that can definitely happen because people can flip in and out. I was just asking Eric's here, my guide from the other side, and I was like, which drama did you play? He was like, I was definitely an aloof. He said I didn't really interrogate or intimidate ever, but I would be kind of poor me-ish at times. Poor me, I have bipolar. Poor me, my brain doesn't work right. Poor me. And I was like, well, I mean, that's valid. And he was like, yeah, but I didn't need to feel poor me about myself. He said, even in that circumstance, you can try to work with your brain to shift things differently. He said, but he's like, you know, hindsight being 2020. Like, he's like, obviously, I'm not on Earth anymore, so I can see it differently now. I'm like, okay. He was like, he's like, I had a lot of dismissive, like, people would be like, Eric, hey, Eric, like my mom. And he was like, and I'd be like, yeah. Like, and he was like, and other people are just trying to take care of me, but they didn't know how to do that differently either. So he said, you see the competition for energy going on? Like, it's like people just whipping a ball back and forth. And then he's like, and then the aloof one's like, I'm not going to hit the ball. And then the other person's like, fine, I'll bean you with it. Like, it's like dodgeball, like, boom. And he said, so that's why it's important that both people break the drama. They both state what's going on, like, yo, you're doing this. And he said, yeah, and sometimes you got to remove yourselves. So I'm glad he popped in. I didn't expect him to come in. He goes, I wasn't invited. Any questions about control dramas? Interesting things that you kind of like noticed? I know we're kind of like skipping up the insights really quickly, but anything you noticed about control dramas that was really surprising, interesting? When I read that section, I was like, oh, I feel like I immediately went through my whole analysis of my family, even my extended family, and was like, I could see how they had all created each other. And I had always understood and studied psych and stuff around like attachment disorders, or I should say attachment styles. And, nervous system states like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, secure, etc. And I kind of just realized but I didn't always know how these different states created each other or played into each other, or like why they'd been happening. Right? And I was like, well, cultural conditioning, which yes, and like systemic stuff, which yes, and we don't have the village, which makes people compete for energy because they aren't filled up. And then I was like, so what's the next thing we need? And I went, oh my God, that was my own unanswered question, like in the book. And the book starts to explain, like, hey, if we can fill up our own energy stores, we can start to break these things because we don't need to go get energy from other people. So that was one of my unanswered questions that got answered. And it was just by me intuitively reading this book for the first time years ago. Did the book answer, I'm curious too, for anyone in here, did the book end up answering any questions that you had kind of had in the back of your mind? Like where you didn't expect to have that answered by reading it, and then all of a sudden you were like, oh my God, this totally puts a puzzle piece into place for me, or like I just made a connection. Oh my God, like, did it help you in any of those types of ways? And feel free to use the comments if you want to. Sorry, I'm just trying to double check the Patreon in case people are commenting on there as well. So I'm trying not to miss any. Okay, Margaret, I'm just seeing yours now, if you can hear me in the video. I know psych relations to control dramas too. Nice. Fictional story helps a lot, kind of like The Alchemist. I love The Alchemist, actually. That's like another good example of a fictional story that teaches like some cool principles, like the omens and the synchronicities being the same thing. When you guys practiced elevating your energy, did it help you with your intuition and synchronicities? It was funny for me when I first read that part, because I had, unbeknownst to me, been doing that for a long time, just because all I felt for a long time in my life was I just have to be outside. Like, why do I have to sit inside? Like, I just loved being outside, and I didn't realize that there were words for what I was doing. I was regulating, I was clearing my head, I was helping my brain work better. There's a lot of evidence to nature gazing and being outdoors as to how it impacts the brain and the body, like your physiology and biology. And so like being outside, it makes total sense that I had like my awakening happening the way that I did, because in the years prior I was outside a lot, like all the time, because all I knew is I just want to be outside. I just want to be outside. I would feel compelled, like several times a day I would go for walks. And I even created part of like my work that I started doing, I created my schedule so that I can prioritize being outdoors and like what I know I need. I'm also a Taurus rising. So like we're like the ones who are like Ferdinand, the book with the bull, where he likes to sit and look at the flowers. Yes, it helps me understand why I love nature so much too. Yeah, in nature, my guides always say is the highest vibration you can find on Earth. Plants are the highest vibration you can find, especially, okay, okay, I've almost forgot this part. The old growth forests. Did you guys get to that part? Or did you guys catch that part? Sometimes we read stuff and then we're like, oh shoot, I like kind of like lost it. But did you guys see the part about like the old growth forests and all that? Sorry, I think we're getting some spam in here. I've definitely noticed like a difference. I feel different in different areas sometimes because of like it's not like newer plants are bad, but I definitely notice a difference when I'm around bigger, older trees or like mountains. Like out here, like in Colorado, I can drive into the mountains. I definitely notice a difference in terms of like how energetically refreshed I feel. I also notice a difference if I'm rushing through a hike or a walk versus I'm like letting myself actually enjoy it. And I'm listening to the wind and I'm listening to the birds and I'm feeling the wind and I'm noticing, you know, the light shimmering through the leaves and stuff like that. It makes, and I'm breathing deeply and smelling everything. I definitely notice a difference. So that for me was like, made a big difference in terms of channeling, especially for those of you guys who want to start channeling a lot more. How you interact with the world, like the rushing and forcing versus the moving and flowing and getting in the groove of things will make a big difference too in how you fill up. Mindfulness in nature, yeah, absolutely. Have you guys ever been anywhere that has like a really old growth forest where you notice the difference? Or a place that was like really ancient and connected to nature? I'm always curious to hear where people have been and where they were like, whoa. Sometimes people, if they're not really ready for that resonance, they're actually like repelled by it. Like I actually know someone who is, they're really anxious, like really, really anxious, and they're like absolute workaholic, like 70 hours a week. They just can't operate a different way. Like they get obsessive over things as well. And they, whenever we talk about like going on hikes or going into nature, they're like repelled. Like they literally like, it makes them more anxious to be in that much stillness. Like their nervous system can't handle it. They're like, I might freak out. And so I'm always just like, okay. Start with a walk in your neighborhood. And then like, it's like their brain and body, it's too triggering for them. Felt incredibly drawn to the redwoods. I was wondering if someone would say the redwoods. I've been thinking about like a Pacific Northwest trip myself this summer. Currently building a house on 6 acres in the forest, my happy place. Love it. I think that part that stood out for me was how children, when they're treated as persons versus not including them because they're children, how adults siphon energy from children. Oh, that's a good piece because that's also part of control drama in a way as well. I thought about that too because of how we look at children as something in our society like to be seen and not heard. You know, we're supposed to control them. And it's like, well, why? A lot of them are more intelligent than the adults here. Like, just because someone's older doesn't mean they're smarter. Doesn't mean they're more mature. I mean, I think we've all seen that, you know. So yeah, I love that part too. Kind of going back to the nature part too, though, did anyone catch that, where that's going with the ninth insight? Because this is something my guides and my intuition has been showing me for a long time. And I'm always curious to hear too, if you read the book and you're like, oh my God, I've been thinking about that. Oh my God, I've had this sixth sense since I was young that this would be like this, or I've seen images of this in my mind, but I didn't think that it was like a thing, you know. But actually the part where they said eventually our population would start to drop a little bit in the book, and so that people could prioritize living in harmony with nature and go out and live into natural spaces. Did you guys catch that in the ninth? I definitely, like the first time I read this, I was like, oh my God, I've been seeing this since I was young in my head. I've always like had a knowing. And I've also been, you know, obviously channeling my guides, and they've told me like, yeah, the population will start to decline. You guys don't need to worry. Nothing bad's going to happen. It's just a natural part of the evolutionary process. And then I read this book years ago and I was like, okay, so obviously this guy was channeling too, which you can kind of feel when you're reading the book. But then I started recently channeling Anna from 200 Years in the Future, and she mentioned population decline, and she said, well, yeah, a lot of our structures are built into nature and, prioritize nature. Like we have trees that grow through the center of people's homes, and that's actually an important part of like our energy processes is we like to have trees there, and that's really good for us. And I was like, what? Like, and I was like, actually, when my friends had this up in Evergreen, Colorado, they had a tree growing through their home. So it's really like meant that we're meant to be kind of doing that, which I thought was super cool, just seeing it echoed in the ninth insight again too. Any questions so far about anything that we've talked about? Anything you're like, ooh, I really want to mention this before we move on? I'm curious too, when we think about control dramas, like kind of going back to that between people, and like how energy works, right? If we can fill up to the point where we're at this higher vibration that the ninth insight talks about, right? Where we're in such a high vibration that people can't even see us, then you get to a point where no one can drain you of anything, right? Which I think is really interesting. But it kind of makes sense why our society is structured the way it is. It's all about energy and control. Like that's where hierarchical and patriarchal structures come from. It's a pyramid, right? Like there's got to be someone at the top who's getting everything, or people at the top who are getting everything from everyone else. And I've always thought to myself, this isn't about money for them at all. This is about control and energy. Like there'll never be enough money for certain people. And so like our future is a lot more circular and we will learn how to fill up on our own, or how to stay, like how to no longer participate in that. And then they'll have nothing to participate with, or to play the game with, right? Like kind of like winning the game is exiting it, and is like seeing the game for what it is. But one of the things my guides have always pointed out is you're easy to control when you're afraid. And so the more you can fill up your energy stores, the less you're going to participate in a lot of the belief systems we have about fear and control, about how we have to work, have to eat, have to operate in relationships, have to operate in society, because and the less you're going to be able to be a pawn in the game. Like the less you're going to be able to be pitted against your own peers and your own loved ones, or your own, like fellow man or whatever, because you're filling up your own energy, and then no one can like really profit off you the same way, because you're like, I noticed when I started to fill up my own energy and feel my own sense of ease and lightness a lot more, listening to my intuition, I wasn't very likely to go like excess spend money. I wasn't like very likely to want to be in control dramas. There were a lot of like energetic, like draining behaviors that I changed the way that I was working, like I mentioned. I stopped believing everything was about a 9 to 5 and money, and like even like how my identity started to shift as well. Because my frequency was changing. Like I was remembering more of my soul self, not my conditioned self. So I was like, well, no wonder they want us working ourselves to death. It's not just about the money we make, it's so that we don't break the system. Like if we fill up our energy too much, we're all going to start questioning everything, and we're going to stop participating, So I found that really interesting, that they kind of like gently started to touch on where things are going in the ninth insight. Because it kind of like points out how some of the things will change, like people not working 9 to 5s anymore. And I was like, my guides have said this, like, this is what I felt as well. And we're seeing it. Like, they estimate that like 50% of the population are going to be entrepreneurs who have flexible schedules by next year. So it's already happening. Like we're already having it occur, Any thoughts on that? Questions? Anything? I have like one piece I also want to touch on too, with the control drama, relationships, etc. give you guys a minute to type in if you have anything. Margaret, you have to watch on YouTube live, and then you'll be able to see the other people's comments. On my way to Santa Fe, New Mexico draws me. I'm excited to spend the weekend there in that energy. Nice. Yeah, this book is definitely, Margaret said that she had read this back in the 90s, early 2000s, and has reread it since her awakening around 2020, and then it's like more things clicked, and that's definitely how a lot like this book is, and a lot of books are. I don't know if any of my angels and guides are guiding me to do much of what this book is recommended. Although I have 2 children, wouldn't change that. I know what you mean. Yeah, my friend has 2, and she's a single mom as well. And she's like, I wouldn't change it for anything. But she's like, I also get what the book is saying about attention, and like I get it. And I was like, yeah. So, reminds me why I feel so repelled by politics and how it pits people against each other. Oh yeah, well, in politics is just basically like, at least the way that it's being run currently is all about negative energies and stuff like that. It's funny, I've been watching The West Wing, which is like from the 90s. And some of the things that they were trying to fix and make sure didn't happen all have been happening. I'm like, this fictional show predicted our future. But it just goes to show how so many real world issues have literally been going on for centuries. And it's like, yep, still haven't solved that one. Probably because a lot of us haven't been able to elevate our energy enough to see outside of the system. What's I gonna say? Oh, so kind of moving into the next insight past the control dramas. So one of the things they talked about was the eye contact. And so like, as you elevate your energy, as you start to no longer participate in the control dramas, what happens? Your synchronicities pick up, and your unanswered questions get answered much more seamlessly. And how does that happen? Through your own insights, images popping in your head, visions, like your intuitions pick up. Also though, through the world around you, right? You find what you need when you need it. You meet the right people at the right time. And remember, they said here, you'll know who you're supposed to speak to and when, because you'll spontaneously make eye contact. And if you miss the chance to talk to them because of your control drama, theirs, or some other thing out of your control, like timing, or like in one of the parts, I think there's like an explosion that goes off and they have to run in different directions. But remember, the right people are always there at the right time for him. And that's one of the things he's learning to work through his aloof drama. But he has to be willing to talk to them too. He has to be willing to share his truth, and the truth of here's what I'm trying to learn. Here's what I've been thinking about. Here's what I'm wondering. And then these people have to really pay attention and elevate their energy to be able to help him spit that out, and to say, oh, well, I don't have all those answers, but I do have this one, or I do, I think I'm supposed to help you do this. I think I'm supposed to get you from here to here. And so, did any of you guys have any epiphanies during that about the like eye contact and talking to people? Because I feel like this is something societally we have a lot of people struggling, like really struggling. I think when you're out in the real world, it's not as hard, but online, when we spend so much of our time online, it can be very like, we forget how to socialize. Have any of you seen it in action though, where you go out, you're just kind of operating on intuition, or you go somewhere and you happen to meet someone and they happen to have some answer to a question you had, or have experience or knowledge about something that you're like, that's so funny. I was just reading about that, or I was just wondering about this earlier today, or have any of you guys kind of had that happen? Yeah. What happened for you, Dariella? And even if you're like, I don't think so, like, I don't think that's happened, remember, like, kind of sometimes we have to be willing to speak to people we make eye contact with. Um, and we have to fill up our energy enough to be able to do that and to flow positive energy and appreciation, like noticing what's beautiful about them or love, like seeing the heart of them to help them with that connection as well. Does anyone want to share a story about times where you synchronistically met someone or synchronistically found what you needed right when you needed it? I feel like that is where a lot of our society is at, is just like people are starting to notice signs and synchronicities. And a lot of people are working toward the next step of, but what do I do with them? And how do I increase those? And this book kind of answers that question. But I feel like that's where a lot of our society collectively is. Like a lot of people believe in signs. And a lot of people believe in synchronicity to a degree or notice it to a degree, but they don't know what it's for. Like they're like, what do I do with this? Or how do I make this happen more? It happened recently where I mentioned a topic, but they were surprised because they'd been talking about it 2 days ago. I can't remember what it was now. That's okay. I actually had, and I appreciate that because that's exactly like what they're talking about, where it's like, what are the odds of that? You know what I mean? I think it happens a lot without realizing it's happening. Yeah. So that's a good point, because I think it happens a lot more than people think too. And I think the reason they don't realize how often it's happening is because one of the people, so like let's say that person who was like, oh, I was just talking about that 2 days ago, it's so funny you bring it up, they had to tell you that. And a lot of times I think people aren't saying it because they're doing the aloof thing. Like they're holding those cards really close to their chest. So you don't know how often your words are helpful. And that's one of the things about signs and synchronicities is they do come from the world around us. Sometimes we are meant to be someone else's sign. And sometimes we're meant to be their synchronicity, and we have no idea how often we might be doing that because the other people are still playing their aloof drama and they're not saying anything. I think about this like all the time. And my guides actually like hammered this into my head before I ever even read this book. Like, you know, if you feel called to mention something and you don't know why, mention it anyways. Like if you feel called to bring up a certain story, something about your life, a book you read, some random quote, something that pops in your head, it doesn't matter, bring it up. Even if the person doesn't admit why it's there, it could be something that helps them now. It could be something that's going to help them 5 minutes from now or a day or a week from now too. So I think that happens too, where it's like we're out ahead of it. And then the person is a week out like, oh my God, I'm so glad that girl mentioned that because now I knew it for this thing that happened. What are the odds of that? Like the universe is always trying to put the puzzle pieces into place. It's always helping us find each other. I've had this happen quite a bit personally. And actually one of the times this happened for me where I met someone at the right time and brought up the right thing at the right time was actually one of my friends. His name is Zach. And the first time I met him, we were with a group of friends and he was like, well, if you're psychic, what's my favorite book? And I was like, well, the only one popping into my head is the Celestine prophecy. And he jumped out of his chair and was like, like, how did you know that? And I was like, what are the odds of that? Because what's happening right now is one of the insights in the Celestine prophecy. So it was like so funny that was the book and that was the. I just met a gal on the Nextdoor app. It's usually so filled with negativity. It really is. It really is. It's like a cesspool of negativity. It's just people. I really think there are more bots than we think though. And the same thing happens on TikTok in the TikTok comments. A lot of negativity are bots. Like there are entire bot farms. I wish you guys understood how bad those are. But there are people who get paid to set those up. And it's for political reasons, outside countries, set them up to like get in here and get us fighting against ourselves. My guides talk about it all the time. Like they're like, be really mindful because a lot of people doing negative shit in the comments are being like, those are bot accounts and AI and all sorts of stuff. So Nextdoor app, they're in places you wouldn't think that they are. And people are like, well, it sounds like a person. I'm like, trust me, that's a bot. filled with negativity, but she was sharing poetry and I thanked her. We are now following each other in Substack and supporting and rating. Yeah, so it's like, hey, like you might have to wade through a little bit of this bullshit in here, but you're gonna find like that one person that you need to meet right at the right time, right? So it's like your intuition and her intuition told you guys both to be there, posting or interacting right at the in the right time, you know. I have to say this is actually how I've met some of my best friends too, because it was just me like following an intuition to reach out to someone or a gut instinct. And then we ended up like chit-chatting and sharing stories and blah blah blah. That's how I met like one of my best friends in the whole world. And then my other friend, I had a nudge to reach out to her, and Eric said, mention me. And so I did, and she was like, I know Eric. Yeah, let's get on the phone. And then now she and I have been friends for like 8 years. So, so the other side is also part of helping us meet and find each other. And that's just for me, like my different spiritual perspective on it as well, is I don't think it's just about our unanswered questions like in the book. I think like some of our intuitions and some of the people put in our paths are because our guides want us to meet. Our loved ones on the other side are like, talk to each other, please. Like, it's only one conversation. You don't have to be best friends forever. Or, oh my God, I'm trying to help you find your best friend. Like, come on, guys. But what I like that he mentions in the book that I've actually seen happen for a lot of people is people will circle back around to each other over and over until they talk. So you'll keep bumping into them. They'll, you know, whatever happens. And then we just kind of have to know and sense in our gut, like if we're meant to continue to share stories with that person and, you know, keep working on that energy part of it. Love that. I'm starting to make new spiritual friends as my old friends are becoming more aloof. Yeah. I really feel like it's, you know, all in right timing. Just a note on that too is I kind of went through that with my old friends kind of leaving my life for a little while, like years and years ago, and meeting a bunch of new friends, which was really fun. And then what was kind of funny is once I came out of the spiritual closet, some of my old friends over the years have circled back around as their awakenings have happened. Like, and I remember knowing that some of them, that was probably going to be it with our friendship. Some of them I had a knowing of, you know, it's just going to take some time, but we'll be back in touch, and we just need that, you know, they have their journey and I have my journey, and it's not meant to always be on the same timeline, and that's fine. Like the universe needs us in different paths right now. So that can kind of help with that part too. Now kind of like with the, you know, control dramas and meeting people at the right time, was anyone feeling any kind of way about the part where they talk about being careful about dating and infatuation? Because remember how he meets, I think the girl's name is Marjorie in the book. And then all of a sudden they get hooked onto each other's energy. Because I think we see this a lot in our society where people get hooked on a person and it's like really often very temporary, but it's like those two people get then they start to hook into each other's energy and get energy from each other. And then all of a sudden, one of them is like, I just can't anymore. But it's because they're mistaking that initial pull, you know, of, oh, I need to talk to this person. We have answers for each other. We're meant to be connected in some way, to help each other's paths. A lot of people confuse that feeling for, oh, we're supposed to date and bump uglies and like whatever. And so, and I think that's one of the things we are actually working on clarifying. And I think that's why we have such a boom in people being single or single by choice. Because I think that's what's going on underneath energetically is people are starting to go, this is an energy game I can't play anymore. I have to fill up on my own. And then I'm going to be able to meet all the right people at the right times. And if I end up dating someone, great, because I will know how to command and fulfill my own energy, and that person likely will be in that place as well, right? Did anyone kind of like read that part and think on it with their previous dating experiences? I remember thinking about this. I don't date anymore, but like when I was younger, I used to think about like, I feel like I'm supposed to talk to this person, but when I would talk to people, they would immediately think I wanted to date them. And I was like, no, just felt drawn. Why does everything have to go in that one direction? You know what I mean? And I'd always be like, this is so frustrating. Like, I feel like there's unfinished business here. I feel like we have information for each other. We're meant to connect each other to other more people, because I noticed that throughout the book is like each person he met was like connecting him to the next people he needed, or even back to people that he had met from before that would have important information for him or him for them, and it was always an and both. But then when he met Marjorie, he got caught up in that attraction, and it started to pull him and yank him off path, right? So we have to be really mindful of that. And again, I really feel like evolutionarily, this is something we are really working on as a society right now, is overcoming the immediate, like, everyone's got to have a soulmate. This has got to be it. I've just got to be dating till I find the one. And I'm like, ooh, like, I think we have to, we're moving through a lot of this to have that. One of the things they talk about in the book, and something that a lot of therapists talk about now, is you need platonic connections for a while. Like, you need to just not have romance for a while. That helps you sort things out energetically in your nervous system, and it helps heighten your intuition. And then if you do meet someone really great, then great, you're ready, right? You're clear-headed in that. I think we're so hungry for a connection that people automatically think that it is romantic when it doesn't have to be. Yeah, or they're overrun by chemical attraction and infatuation. It's like, not everyone has to sleep together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. And so it's interesting because it's like, one of the things they've pointed out is, with the control dramas, that's like another control drama, right? It's like one of the ones not mentioned in the book. It's like the infatuation drama, where it's like, we're not squabbling, we're not competing for energy, we're not fighting, but we're both like, when you get into those immediate, like, we have to jump into this right away, we have to date right away, you might miss the important messages that need to be sent because you're automatically trying to hook into each other. It's like succubuses, you know what I mean? Like energetic vampires who don't know that they're doing that because they haven't seen otherwise or learned that there's other ways to operate. So I get like wary about using terms like energy vampires, but that is essentially what it is, right? And unfortunately, I think most of us have probably played that role at some point in time because we didn't know any better. But I think this is why our society is evolving. People are statistically getting married later. I think that's what's going on underneath a lot of the other things, like that people are saying about dating, not having money to have families or buy houses or whatever. Like all the other reasons people are giving, I guess. Any questions about that? Thoughts about that? You guys are welcome to bring questions or things you want to discuss too. I'm just kind of like throwing things out there until I see more stuff. Also, I think like kind of on that note, since we're going through this evolutionary process and people are getting married later or aren't getting married at all, we have way more people single than by choice than ever before. We're seeing the push-pull with that societally, right, and politically, like them wanting to police people's decisions and stuff. And I think that's part of where evolutionary cycle is also taking the part about children, where they said, just as a note, I don't agree with necessarily everything in every book that I recommend or every book that we read in book club. It's kind of there as food for thought. That's what book club is. But they did talk about, making sure we have the energy and filling our children up just the same way we would with conversations with adults. And, I think it's interesting because I'm like, I can already see where that part of the book where we might have less children per adult. I've already like been kind of told that that's coming, and I was like, wow, that makes sense energetically in a really interesting way. Like, but I was like, like I think we're evolutionarily already moving toward it, like less and less people are having kids. There's a lot of people that are child-free by choice, and it might be for their own different reasons. But I think at the end of the day, I think energetically, it's kind of also about this too. I've been with my husband for about 35 years. I remember standing in my mom's kitchen on the phone, realizing that I loved him, but needed my other friends to fill other roles because he didn't complete me. Yeah, because no one person is supposed to do that, That's a lot to like, like if we want someone else to complete us, that's a lot of pressure to put on them. Like I've always thought with dating, I was like, I don't want that pressure. Like I want you to have other people, like other things. I think we will have more examples of what platonic friendships are supposed to feel and look like versus just romantic relationship. Yeah. Yeah, and we have to, in order to have like really platonic ones, we have to be energetically fulfilled. Um, like we can't even be going into platonic friendships like suctioning energy off of each other or playing competitive games. Like, and we've all had even like, you know, friendships that have been like that. I had a lifelong friendship that ended like a couple of years ago because I was like, I just don't want to be friends with someone who like just competes with their friends, even subtly, or doesn't like it when things are going right for us, or when like we're celebrating a goal that we've reached or something. I want to have friends that like when they tell me they've reached a really important goal for them, I'm excited, and I want to have friends who are like that for me, who don't feed off of it when things are going wrong. And like I noticed, so like this could even happen in regular friendships, and it took me really energizing myself and sitting in my own energy, like my own sovereignty, to really see that clearly. And like I had to take actually a little bit of space from the friendship first before I could see it fully clearly, because there was so much of that drain there and so much of that attachment there. You know what I mean? Questions or comments about friendships, energy dynamics, any of that? I really feel like societally, this is a lot of what we're working out. And this is, so like when you look at the insights, you're like, ooh, I can see where certain ones are like society as a whole is really working on this. You know what I mean? Or like a big chunk of society is collectively working through this. Some of these things are mirrored in the gene keys as well. If you guys don't know what that is, it's really interesting. It's like a frequency change that we're working on. Richard Rudd talks about some of the same evolutionary things that he sees coming, and he's the guy who channeled the whole gene keys system. He talks about some of the same things coming that were mentioned in this book and by other channelers. So it's really interesting how many of them are getting the same downloads, you know. Anything you guys want to discuss that we haven't discussed yet, kind of leading up to the 9th insight? I know we haven't fully touched on that one yet. Was there anything in the 9th insight that anyone like really resonated with, found really challenging? Were you excited? Was it kind of overwhelming? Did you feel like disappointed, incredulous, like skeptical of it? Looking forward to learning more about the gene keys in your videos we started doing today. We do, yeah. Self-assuredness. Yes. Yeah, those are like energetic transits. But the gene keys are really a system to find your spiritual purpose through healing core collective wounds and activating. It's kind of like activating the hidden purpose hidden in your spiritual DNA. So yeah, it's a very cool system. I really highly recommend like kind of like Googling around online and looking up more about it. You can get your own free chart, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, so what'd you guys think of the 9th insight and how he came to find that one too? Any thoughts? Sorry, I'm just checking over on Patreon to make sure no one's commenting in there, so I'm not missing it. Okay, I think we're good. I know one person didn't make it to the 9th. Did we not make it to the 9th yet? Maybe. That's okay if we didn't. The 9th is essentially talks about like, here's why these energetic practices, why all these things that he covered earlier in the book matter. And it's all about where society is evolving to in the future. So it talks about the evolutionary process of everything, like why it's important that we understand our spiritual purpose as like the evolution of our parents' purposes, and why do we have to end control dramas, and why do we want to fill up our energy tanks, why do the synchronicities matter, where is everything trying to take us, and it's because it's all part of a larger evolution. I 100% remember the ninth. Did he find it after he got back to the States? No, he finds it in Peru, because remember the church, and the or some members, leaders of the church there in Peru, and then the government were trying to suppress the manuscript because in the Ninth Insight it talks about the larger evolution of humanity, and basically the higher religious leaders in the book and and the government systems in the book only wanted to suppress it because it talks about how we will evolve out of essentially like needing to believe in certain principles taught in the religions. And so if each person, for example, has their own energy stores and is their own free thinker, and we're going through an evolutionary process, that kind of bucks some of what certain religions say is happening, or it did happen, right? Or it might make people doubt and question where we came from, that there wasn't a creator, there was an evolutionary process. So, and same thing with the governmental systems. Well, if we're all filling up our own energy, then certain people hierarchically don't get to really be in charge, right? So highly recommend going back over it. But it also, the Ninth Insight also covers like, hey, here's where humanity is going. It talks about the evolution of people living one with nature more, how our people will literally, like their atomic structure of the body will begin to change, and we'll turn more and more into light beings, because we'll dimensionally be shifting in essence, which my guides have also talked about a ton in my videos. It talks about how our work-life balance and structure will change. Eventually people won't have full-time jobs, which is already happening. Which we know is coming in the future already. How eventually it's not going to be about, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, because our monetary systems will change and go away. And so in essence, if we don't have to work for money, what do we have to work for? So you can imagine like a governmental system might be worried about that, especially ones in cahoots with like corporate structures. But it talks about how eventually there will be a different form of currency, and almost like exchange that happens from people exchanging information. Now that part I don't know if I think that's all that of what's going to be in the future, but I did kind of resonate with that. And so it starts to talk about, here's what's going to replace our current like work and money and stuff like that, and how again, like population will go through decline, which is, if you can imagine a government system that is in bed with our corporate, structures and companies, they don't want population decline. They want workers, right? They want to make more and more and more and more and more. Well, but for what? Like, if you have less people, you don't need to make more. Like, you know what I mean? And so, but it really talks about energetically where we're trying to evolve to. And eventually humans will be lighter and brighter. We're going to evolve out of needing food. I mean, that's something that my guides have talked about for years. Like, that's not going to happen in our lifetimes or anytime soon. But essentially, yeah, there's a larger evolutionary process. So highly recommend going back and rereading, or at least like kind of glossing over that part. We will automatically shift because we're going to a higher vibration. I can't wait to read the ninth now. Yeah, it's really cool. I actually sometimes will go back and read just that part of the book, and just kind of re-immerse myself in it. And then my guides will start chatting about things that they want us to know about too. They always say that it's kind of like already happening. It's inevitable, because they said like individually we don't necessarily have fate individually, because we have so much free will as people, but it's more about consciously using our free will well. And as we fill up our energy, we get to do that when we fill up our energy the right way, right? Because we shift into our intuitive knowing versus like the head. And Richard Rudd talks about this as well in the Gene Keys, the evolution of the solar plexus, going beyond the head and into the heart and the solar plexus. So yeah, so it's kind of like you see these threads weaving between different things. Any questions? Do you recommend the next book's insights? Yeah, I think like the 10th insight, I was like, out of all the books, I didn't think it was my favorite, but I've thought about like, do we want to do the next books? Because there's 3 more books. So I actually thought the 12th insight was probably the most powerful out of all of them. It talks about, I guess I liked the Secrets of Shambhala too. Yeah, they're all pretty good. But so like the next book is the 10th insight, and then there's the 11th insight in the book after that, and then the 12th insight. And so there's more beyond these, which I think is really cool. One of them covers, mediumship and connection to the other side, astral projection, like those frequency changes and stuff. It's pretty cool. They do talk about how to use energy and project energy to help, like in group consciousness, and how there may or may not be beings who are already doing things like this to help us. So if you guys are interested in any of that, maybe we'll do the next books. I'm trying not to give too much reading for everyone, because I've noticed if I do like a book a month, I've noticed the participation really dwindles. I think it's probably too much on everyone's plates. There are other books. Yeah, the Celestine Prophecy, the first one is that's the one that had the big cult following. The other books I feel like weren't as popular, but they're definitely really interesting and insightful. I'm curious too, so for each of you, just kind of going back over the insights, which insight do you feel like you're really working on right now? We didn't really talk as much about I forget which number insight it is, 6 or 7, but where he has to break down his personal history with like his parents and stuff like that, and looks through where all of his life has been leading him to this moment. But it's kind of a way of like spiritually understanding our parents' spiritual purpose, and therefore our spiritual purpose as our parents' evolution. Like we're the evolution of our parents. So I kind of skipped over that one today, but yeah, like which insight do you guys see happening most in your life? Do you think, like, which one do you think you're working on mastering the most right now? I just joined Channelers and Change Makers. Oh, nice. Yeah, we're happy to have you. We have there's a whole bunch of classes already in there for you to take if you'd like to. Being on the flow versus force. Yeah, I feel like that is gonna continue for a lot of us for a while, because we have the frequency or the energy of fear, and therefore stress is so pervasive on the planet, and it's worse in certain areas. Like North America is there's a lot. One thing I think North American culture is evolving out of also is the culture of force, which the current GQ transit actually talks about. But in essence, I think one of the things we're undoing is the collective story of struggle to success, like the American dream, that everything has to be hard in order for you to be worthy of what you have. We're really undoing that, like very, very quickly, through Like we can see it in the generational shifts happening, and because the internet exists now. So it's made things a lot easier. A lot of our tech has made things easier. So it's kind of like we can see the part tech is supposed to be playing, and we can see where we need to be responsible with the tech we have, you know. But that energy of like the force, stress, fear is very pervasive. So a lot of us, I think, are working on like distilling that. And that's what the gene keys can also help you do as well, is they do it through a different means. But in essence, with the gene keys, he gives you different ways to contemplate things happening in your life. And so it's like a gentle noticing, sort of a pseudo meditation. And it helps you shift frequencies. Versus like using your head to try and heal. Like, oh, I have to heal through understanding. It's like, well, if we could heal through understanding, we would have healed already. You know, a lot of us like intellectually understand a lot of things already. Managing my own energy, making sure I'm not playing into dramas, or a lot of ways energy being drained. Yeah, and then like the more that you are filling up your own energy, like it says in the book, through, and the guides talk about this in readings all the time, having fun, belly laughs with friends, going to improv, making art, dancing, singing, going for walks, noticing beauty, creating beauty, you know, all sorts of things. Like the guides are always giving more ways too. And the more you're doing stuff like that, the less you're going to want to play into dramas, because it just doesn't feel good. Like it just is like, why would I even put my attention there? And the more that you're keeping your energy up, the less anything else can drain you. That's how I like do a lot of readings without getting drained, because I'm just like, you know. Does that kind of make sense to everyone? This is also one of the things we taught in our energy workshop. I think it was in February, in the Patreon groups, and it was about how we're responsible for our energy, and our energy levels. And I think that's a hard shift to make too for a lot of people in general, because again, we do have so much programming of like, you have to work so much, you have to work hard, life has to be a certain way. You're just gonna have to do blah, blah, blah. But then we start to realize like, well, but when I do things like choose work that doesn't feel good for me, I let myself get drained. When I choose relationships or to participate in dramas or conflicts that don't feel good to me, I'm draining myself. Like this isn't just other people draining me, I'm allowing this, I'm participating. What if I could do things differently? And so I always tell people, like, you don't have to just take our word for it. You don't always have to just believe what the book says. Try experimenting. Like just see, well, what if I tweak my schedule? What if I just start saying no? What if I just start removing myself from that situation, or choosing this energy elevating activity instead of this energy draining one, like little by little? What if I just see how I feel? Just see what happens for a couple weeks. And like, because I feel like that lets you kind of collect data and just see, oh, okay, this did start to work. Because then it's like you get to see, how do I need to work things for yourself for a while, you know? One of the gals I attuned in Reiki is adamant that it awakened the artist within her. She's now started painting and selling her art. I love that. I need to go get Reiki done. I've been feeling it lately. I'm like, I need a good energy session. Like I need like an energy session from someone else. You know what I mean? Every once in a while, I'm like, we need that community. Like we need the healers need the healers. I think Reiki's so cool too. Any questions? I don't want to keep us on too long. Questions? Anything we didn't cover, didn't talk about, that you wanted to talk about? Do we want to read the 10th insight next? Or you guys feel pretty done? we're pretty good with where we're at. If you're on the fence about it, that's okay. We're basically do like a book a quarter. So I was gonna have us do Wayne Dyer's autobiography because it's so good. It talks about he used to be a spiritual teacher. He passed a while back, but he's been one of my guides for a while, and he has a really great book about his journey from being very like left-brained, intellectual. He was a therapist for a long time, and he's written like 30 something books, I think. But he's always been a really open creative channel. And so his autobiography talks about his initial story, the process of forgiveness with his dad who abandoned him, and then moves him into, he starts to talk about how he spontaneously started channeling. And he would have spontaneous moments of strength or healing, being visited by a goddess named Isis. And then he even wrote a book and channeled her. And then he started channeling like Saint Francis and Saint Teresa of Avila and stuff. Ooh, I'm getting chills. Woo! He's just had like his story's really interesting. So I always love a good autobiography. It's not like a self-help. It's not like a here's what you need to do. It's more of just his story. He's actually really funny when his book isn't very funny. Like it's the way he actually talks when you watch, you can watch old videos of his speeches and stuff like that. And he's actually really funny. He used to do a ton of public speaking. And so he's funny when he comes in and chit chats too. The 10th would work, but Wayne Dyer is good too. Yeah, I've been kind of like between the two because I was like, well, if we want to continue with the books, then we can. We don't have to though. And then my other thought was Perdita Finn. One of her books came out, I think, this year or late last year, and then I think she has another one coming out, if I understand correctly. But I know some people kind of struggle. Can kind of struggle with the language that she uses because it can be a little, it's poetic, but sometimes it can be a little too, what's the right word, nebulous. Like sometimes some of the wording that she has can make it a little bit hard to fully be like, huh? Like you're kind of just like, what did she just say? And that's coming from someone who was like a literal like literature major in college. So I was like when I found myself reading her book being like, this is a little too ethereal. Like I feel like we need to bring this back down to earth a little bit more. So far it's been pretty interesting. So that's been kind of on my list too for summer reading, but we don't have to decide today either. Yeah, I don't want to keep us too long, but thank you guys so much for coming to book club this time. If you have like recommendations or books you want to throw into the mix for our summer reading, just let me know, and we can always like vote too. Or if you have questions about anything, feel free to reach out as well. I will post more on the Gene Keys soon. I have a video I have to post today about the Gene Key transit that we're moving into, because this one's a good one. It's all about presence and timelessness in a sense. And I'm also going to do some videos like introducing like what are the Gene Keys, how does this work, what are they for, like a little bit more on that as well. Okay, well, thank you everybody. Go and have a wonderful day.